Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I'm Scott. It's time for the end of month wrap up for May. As I did with the April one, it's going to be a little bit different than what I usually do, which is go over all the books that I read during the month. I'm not going to do it this month because I read way too many books. I won't say the number, but it's a ridiculous amount. So, what I am going to do, I'm going to take the worst or least liked books of the month and the best liked books of the month and rank those. Uh, the rest of them are kind of in a little bit of a, I guess, use the term mediocre area, so I won't go over them this time. If I continue with this trend of reading a lot, this is probably how I will do it. If it's not as much, I will probably just do every book in the month, but we'll have to see how it goes. So let's go ahead and get started. Coming in number 10 on the least liked books of the month is Capture the Moment by Casey Luck. As with a lot of the books this month, this is a sapphic romance. Jennifer has just been fired from a job. She has anxiety. She, upon a suggestion from a friend, goes to a cabin that is owned by Riley, who's a photographer, basically a bit of a loner, stays away from people generally. These two people slowly develop something and then they kind of split apart and then they kind of get together, kind of split apart, kind of get together. It's a long enough book, but it seems very short in the relationship between the two women just doesn't really seem to work in any way. Uh, as with most romances, they do end up together at the end of the book, but it's like, why? I don't know. I just don't know. I have read romances in the past where two people who, for one reason or another, do not have their shit together get together and it works, but it always feels like in this book that the author is just not willing to go in depth with these characters. So it's very surface level. So I don't really feel like I get any character development out of these two people. Book number 9 is See You Next Month by Jamie Moody. Uh, two women, Kelsey Kinney and Isabella Burns, are hired by basically this resort to do promo work for them. And what it comes out is that each month they will go to this resort and do this work. One of them's like a I guess a web developer or an app developer, and the other one is I believe in marketing. They're older women, I believe in their 50s maybe, and one of them, which one I can't remember because I read this book oh, probably near the beginning of the month, which is about a month ago. But one of them is gay, one of them is straight, as far as we know, and they develop feelings for each other. And so each time they come back, each month, it progresses a little bit by little bit. Uh, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the relationship. It's one of those ones where the women, their dialogue is everything that they think. Information dumping in a lot of ways, and people just don't talk to each other like this in real life. It's okay, not particularly interesting. I read this roughly a month ago, and I cannot tell you what character is Kelsey and which character is Isabella. I do not remember which one is the gay one. I don't remember which one is the lesbian. I think it's Kelsey. I think Isabella has sons and Kelsey has grown daughters, but that could be switched. I just don't know. Now it's an okay book. I will tell you that the 10 books I talk about here that are the worst or least liked, they are ones that I ranked as 2.5 stars and below. And most of these are 2.5 stars, which means they're meh. They're all right. They're not awful. They're just like eh. There are a few that are worse. So, but it's just fine. Number 8, which is Notes from an Execution by Danya Kakofka. It is not a sapphic romance. It's about a man who is on death row, who is about to be executed, basically going over his thoughts and his actions on the day of his execution, but also going back in time to three women in his life, one being his mother, one being somebody he knew when he was in foster care, and one being the sister of his wife. And going back in glimpses with them over different periods. In a way, a little bit like See You Next Month, there's just not a lot of in-depth look at these characters. I don't know if maybe the author should have concentrated on one of these characters instead of the three women. The what's his name? Ansel. Ansel, the person on death row. You don't really see what led him to this. It, it's like looking through a shower pane. You can see the outline of the person, but you really can't see the person. That's kind of what I feel like when I'm reading this. Is I don't really get to see him. It's just like a peripheral vision of him, and it just doesn't work very well for me. Number 7 is Release the Stars by Harper Bliss. This is one of the ones it's set in Hollywood. There are several set in Hollywood, some of which I believe at least one of them is on my most liked books this month. But this one wasn't. Charlie Cross, her ex girlfriend, leaves her for a man, and she's bitter about it. Very bitter. Very, very, very bitter person. But she meets Ava Castaneda, who is a very well known uh, cooking show host. She's bisexual. She, for whatever reason, has something for Charlie. Uh, Charlie is just an extremely unlikable character. Oh, your girlfriend cheated on you with a man? Yeah, I can understand. You're a miserable person, and why would anybody want to be with you? Why would Ava keep coming back to you? I don't get it. You're an unlikable person. You do not deserve happiness. And it upsets me a little bit that you got it at the end, even though you don't show it very well because you're a miserable person. Uh, Number 6 is Dear Ripley by Jacqueline Ramsden. Alicia and Ripley divorced 8 years ago. They'd been together pretty much since high school, but they kind of grew apart gradually and didn't really make the effort to make things work. And so ever since then, they've been kind of avoiding each other. Alicia has moved away from the village that they were in, hasn't really gone back in that time, but she does have to go back for her friend who is pregnant and I guess needs her. And so, of course, they run into each other. And their first interactions don't go very well. So, Alicia basically decides to write a note to Ripley, and communication goes back and forth that way a little bit. I mentioned in April's end of month uh, the character of Paisley in the Bayview Romances trilogy. how she was a person who was overconfident, really seemed to think a lot of herself, uh, kind of imposed on others in ways like she would just go into her sister's house and cook in her kitchen, or she would go into her friends slash lovers house and open up her email and read her email. And the type that type of character who really seems overconfident about themselves, almost cocky, it it can be very off-putting. It works with Paisley, but with Morgan, one of the best friends here, it does not work. It does not work at all. I generally like this book, except for two problems. One, basically the entire village was willing this relationship to happen. So it didn't really feel like the main characters were really doing anything. They were being forced into this. So when they do finally get together, it's like, okay, well, you were not the controllers of your own destiny. So who cares? But also, Morgan is one of the least likable characters I have read. I have read Jacqueline Ramsden books before, uh, some of them co written with Lily Seabrook, and I generally think they're fine. The other one I read by her, written solely, I believe, was a Christmas book. It was okay, but this one is just the character of Morgan just totally awful. And there is a sequel called Love Morgan, which obviously Morgan is a main character in it. I'm not going to read it. A book where Morgan is the main character, I do not want that at all. Number 5 is Temporary Girl by Robin Alexander. I have read several books by Robin Alexander now. Quite honestly, a lot of them fall into the kind of good category, like 3.5 star. Not something that I generally seek out. There have been a few that I've probably rated a 4 star, but they're decent enough reads. This one, which was actually my first Robin Alexander book that I read, which kind of makes it surprising that I read other ones. It just doesn't work. Jody and Val are at like this. The two of them are at like this week long pre wedding party, and Jody is there basically as acting as a beard for her friend because he doesn't want to come out as gay to his family, even though his family pretty much knows he's gay. And she and Val develop feelings for each other, but because they're trying to act like she's a loving girlfriend to his boyfriend who is gay, uh, they have trouble getting together, even though everybody knows he's gay. Uh, And of course, temporary girl, that's Jody, basically means she doesn't do relationships well. uh, but neither of these characters work. I swear for the longest time, I thought these were like people in their 20s, early 20s, like just out of college 20. Both of them are almost 40, which if I'd read further Robin Alexander books, I would have understood because almost all her characters like in that late 30s, early 40s frame, but didn't know that at this. I was reading these characters, so I'm like, oh, these are young people, and that's like, wait, you're almost 40? No, you're not. That's not what you're acting like. Characters just didn't work. Number 4 is The Christmas Ball by Lily Seabrook. I generally like Lily Seabrook, but some of her books and some of her tropes that she does just don't work. There's like a family Christmas ball. It's weird. It's like set in modern times, but it almost feels like Victorian in nature in a way. Alice goes there. Her best friend is there. A girl she has had a crush on forever is there. They both have a crush on each other. They just don't know it. it it's very similar to another Lily Seabrook Christmas novel that was much better. Um, but honestly, it just didn't work as well. The family was more annoying. It was very misogynistic, or the characters, some of the characters were just in an over the top way where it's just like it was painful to read. And I'll be honest, I also read that there was a sequel to it, and I read the synopsis of the sequel, which didn't have me feeling very good about this book. And when I started reading this book and the book didn't turn out as well written as I would have liked, that kind of dragged it down a bit too. So, and I haven't read the sequel, will not read the sequel. One of the few Lily Seabrook books that I just won't read. Number three is Jolt by Chris Bryant. Bethany Lang is a mystery writer. She's at a working basically as a counselor at a summer camp for LGBTQ youth. She sees singer Allie Hart there. Allie is really into her right away for reasons that I still don't really understand. It is written from Bethany's point of view, first person point of view. I will also admit I listened to this on audiobook, and the choices that the narrator used for Bethany's voice really make her sound very childlike, and the relationship didn't work for me because it's always like, okay, Allie is this older person who is kind of, I don't want to say predatory, but really being kind of like in your face with this younger, naive person. Even though Bethany isn't younger, she just comes across that way. It just, and then when they get together, I just don't see any of the chemistry. It just doesn't work in any way for me. So I don't know if I'm going to read any Chris Bryant books in the future. This is the only one I've read so far. I have plenty of other books to read, so it's not something I'm seeking out. Number two is 300 Steamer Recipes from Brian White. I bought a bamboo steamer, wanted recipes to cook. Unfortunately for me, which it makes a lot of sense, but most of the recipes in here are seafood. I don't eat seafood. Also, I got this on Kindle. Don't know if that affected it anyways, but the recipes in here, no pictures. Uh, in 300 recipes, maybe a dozen that I could see myself using. So there's nothing bad about the book except for the lack of pictures, except it's not what I wanted. So that's why it gets so low a ranking. But if you like seafood and you don't need to see pictures, then and you have a bamboo steamer, this may be the recipe for you. Number one, The Weight of What Was by Pip Landers-Lett. Anna and Grace meet in 2002. They start a relationship. Uh, there are things that, because of like college and their jobs, keeps them apart for a little bit. And then finds out that Grace sleeps with Anna's brother because they were lonely. And Grace gets pregnant, and she and the brother end up getting together. But Anna and Grace still have feelings for each other. So you go for like 20 years, and then like in 2022, they're on a trip in the Antarctic for like Anna's and the brother's grandmother, and find out the brother is cheating on Grace with somebody else. And then we find out that Anna still has feelings for Grace. Does Grace still have feelings for Anna? Oh, has stuff happened between Anna and Grace in the time in between? It's just a book of very unlikable people doing very unlikable things, and there's no happy ending. I mean, there's a happy ending, but there's no happy ending because I don't care about any of these characters. Nothing in this book made me care about any of them. I honestly, it got so far along where I was like, oh, I'm close enough to being done that I won't DNF this book. And that's the only reason I didn't DNF the book. If I had seen like where it was going soon enough, I probably would have DNF'd it. But I don't know if it's the worst book of the year. I don't think it is. I think there's one or two that'll probably be that, mainly because I am doing a better job at DNFing books that I know I'm not going to like. But it's definitely in the top five least liked books of the year so far. Then we come into the most liked books of the year. These books are all books that I ranked 4.5 stars or higher, although I don't think I ranked any book a 5 star this month. But these are all 4.5 or higher books that I really, really liked. And maybe there's just one or two small things that kept me from giving it a full 5 star. Number 12, there are only 12 books that I ranked 4.5 stars or higher. Number 12 is Departure from the Script by JAE. I've complained about the one name thing before, so I won't do it this time. I will just allude to it. But Amanda Clark is an actress. She goes to like this anti-Valentine Day party and gets drunk, wakes up next morning in the apartment of photographer Michelle, who's Butch, and she thinks they did something. It turns out that they didn't, and they basically like Amanda's like, okay, I don't, I'm not attracted to butch women, and Michelle's like, I don't date actresses, so it's like, okay, well, thanks for letting me stay. Bye. Probably won't see each other again. And of course, they do end up seeing each other again, and they do develop feelings for each other. It part of what I like about this, is, besides the fact that both these characters are likable and they work together, they work together despite their initial reservations about each other, is that it does show a little bit of light on Hollywood and homosexuality in Hollywood and how people handle that. Which we that won't be the only time that we see that from Jay, even in this month, because there were, I believe, 4 or 5 books from the Hollywood series that were put on Kindle Unlimited this month, which meant I got to read them for free. So I read all of them. So I know there's at least another one uh, coming up fairly soon, actually. Number 11 is Damage Control by Jay. It is from the Hollywood series. Also, it is the first book in the Hollywood series. Grace is a very well known actress. She has a photo taken with her with another woman who, although it is not known, is gay, and she has rumors spread about her being gay. Oh, even though Grace is straight, as far as she and everybody knows. So her very overbearing mother, uh, who is her manager, I don't like the mother at all, but the mother works within the scope of the book. Hires a publicity office, and Lauren Pierce is the publicist that works with Grace. Lauren is a lesbian, and she and Grace start to develop feelings for each other, try to resist each other. There's always the thing in these books that I often mention is the inappropriate relationships. obviously with the publicist, a bit of an inappropriate relationships. A lot of it depends on the book handles it. I think this book handles it well. Not that they resist the inappropriate relationships, but the way that they don't resist the inappropriate relationship works very well within the book. And just like with Departure from the Script, kind of the homophobia of Hollywood is handled very well here. Number 10 is Marigold by Melissa Braden. This is not part of a series, although it's sort of a sequel to The Last Lavender Sister. The Lavender Sisters, their last name is Lavender, and their first names are flower names, Marigold being one of them. Aster was the main character of the Last Lavender Sister, and I really liked Aster in that book, and I even liked her partner. What was it? I can't remember. I think it's Tony, maybe. No, I can't remember her name, but it's not in my top books. Mainly because it kind of went back and forth way too much. But Marigold is very protective of her family, and when a food critic criticizes the restaurant that Aster runs, uh, on the night that Aster basically has to leave because her partner goes into labor, well, the critic is well known for being a bit harsh, and that's kind of where she gets all her fame is from how harsh she is. Marigold basically records a reply to it, and it blows up, and basically Alexis Wakefield, the critic, loses her job, and she kind of goes back to the small town area where Marigold and Aster are from, kind of to get her bearings again. Now, if you've read Melissa Braden books before, you know the name Wakefield, although you don't know Alexis, because Aspen Wakefield is a character who has appeared in several books. She's an actress. She's truly an awful person. uh, she and Alexis don't get along, which should be enough to show you it's like, okay, Alexis kind of has the Ice Queen thing going, but she's not a bad person if she's against Aspen. Uh, so Alexis and Marigold are kind of like it's enemies to lovers, but the enemies like last a real short time, and then it's just basically it's Alexis dealing with who she has become. And then Marigold having to deal with not putting everybody else in front of her, not putting her family ahead of everything. And I think part of that is one of the reasons why this book is in my top 12 and The Last Lavender Sister isn't. Even though I like the character Aster more than any other characters in these books, I just don't think the story works as well. Number 9 is About That Kiss by Harper Bliss. It's another one of a Hollywood story. Uh, Two actresses, Ida Burton and Faye Fleming, are starring in a movie that has a lesbian storyline in it. Ida is a lesbian, but she's not out. Faye is straight. The screenplay in the book is also written by Charlie Cross. So we have more Charlie Cross in here, and she's still unlikable, but she's a minor character. There's a kiss scene during the movie that changes things, kind of forces Ida to have to deal with whether she wants to remain in the closet, and kind of forces Faye to deal with if she's quite as straight as she is, and what does that mean for them as actresses. And I did not set out for this month to be largely about the celluloid closet, essentially, but somehow it turned out that way just by the books that I ended up reading, even though I didn't seek them out for that purpose. The, the relationship works. The overall homophobia in Hollywood storyline works. The only thing that doesn't work is Charlie, but she plays such a small part that I can forgive it. I I know Charlie is mentioned in other Harper Bliss books, but she never plays a huge part as far as I know. As long as she doesn't play a prominent role again, I guess I'm okay. Number 8 is The Love Conspiracy by J.J. Arias. As I mentioned last month, generally like J.J. Arias. One of her books, Destination U, was one of my top books last month. Also, J.J. Arias tends to write two types of books, at least what I read, because I know she writes some paranormal stuff that I'm not particularly interested in. But as far as the type of storyline she does for the Sapphic romances, it's age gap and enemies to lovers. Sometimes those are in the same. This one is an age gap, not really enemies to lover, which I gotta be honest, I prefer. Her enemies to lovers don't work well for me because it involves one of them being a truly awful person, and we're supposed to just accept that, like, oh yeah, they're good now. But this isn't the case here. Veronica Marin is married to Gabe. She has found out that he is cheating on her. She goes to see one of the women that he is cheating on her with. Allie. Allie is a yoga instructor. She's engaged to Gabe. She does not know that Gabe is married. And we will see, although they don't play as prominent a role, that he is in relationships with several other women who don't know he is involved with anybody else either. Veronica is basically building her case. She's a lawyer too, but she's building her case against Gabe before uh, going forward with divorce proceedings. And Allie ends up working with her. Uh, don't think I mentioned Veronica's 40, Allie is 27, so there is the age gap thing. They're not really enemies because they didn't do anything to each other. Veronica does come across as a bit standoffish, which makes sense when she's talking to her husband's mistress who is engaged to him. Yeah, I can understand, but they develop a relationship. I really like the relationship between the two of them, and this is just two people discovering each other, discovering somebody that, oh, we probably would have never crossed paths before, but we are made for each other. And I like both characters. Just uh, Gabe is a very well-rounded character, but he doesn't really need to be in here. Generally enjoyable. Number 7 is "Marry Me" by Melissa Braden. Allison Hale is engaged to, I forget his name, but Brent Carmichael. She just kind of gets engaged to him. Uh, her sister suggests that she go to a wedding planner agency, which is run by Megan Kincaid. Megan works with Allie. Uh, Allie is not the type of person Megan expects her to be because Allie's a elementary school teacher, not the socialite that she would expect to be with somebody like Brent Carmichael. Uh, Megan is a lesbian. Allie is straight. Allie is a bit different, I would say. Uh, Often just saying things that she thinks, which includes at one point having a dream about Megan. Megan is a bit of a player at the beginning of the book, but it's almost just mentioned in passing. And then when the two of them start to develop feelings for each other, it kind of goes by the wayside, and a lot of it is just like Allie's feeling an obligation to get married, which isn't so much for her, in large part is because of her family and because of her pushy ass sister. And Megan trying to deal with her feelings for her client and to deal with her feelings for her client because she is a professional. And I think there's perhaps one or two twists too many, but overall, the story is great. The chemistry is amazing. And I like both of these characters. I probably would just say took one twist off, it would have ranked even higher. Number 6 is Scarlet Fever, Scarlett, by Claire Hyden Stevenson. I've now read, I think, 7 or 8 books by this author. This is the best one, first one I read actually. Claudia is in her early to mid 50s. Been divorced some years, far enough back where she's not really bothered by it. But she goes out with friends and they go to a gay club because she doesn't want to be hit on by young men looking for a cougar, and so she is hit on by a young woman looking for a cougar, who turns out to be Scarlet. And even though Claudia is straight, they do have a one night thing, and Claudia's like, okay, yeah, that's it. Uh, but then her daughter Diana asked if her friend Letty can stay with them. And by the way, uh, Scarlett is in her early to mid 30s, I think. So not like 18-year-old or anything like that. Uh, Letty turns out to be Scarlett, both surprised to see each other, and then they try to resist. Claudia a little bit more trying than Scarlett. Um, but then they succumb, and it's just a lovely relationship. Uh, you do have the inevitable disclosure uh, to the people in Claudia's life, one of which they choose, and other one which is kind of like, well, uh, but the reactions are better than you see in some of these other books. The relationship, all relationships in here are generally pretty good. I like Claudia's relationship with her children. There are sequels to this. There is the next book is called Scarlet, and it just further on in their relationship. And then there's Goddess of the Moon, which is about Claudia's daughter Diana. Both of those are good, just not good enough for me to have them in the top 12 here. And also, Scarlet and Claudia are in a appear in another book called Letting Go, which is not about them, but they're side characters in it. But of all the books that they appear in, this one is the very best one. As has been the case with last month, I have a Lily Seabrook in the top books, and in the worst books, coming in at number 5 is Fake It by Lily Seabrook. This is one, like there's part of a series, the Port Andrea series, 5 books in it. I've read all 5 books. This time, the best one is the first one. Avery has opened a restaurant. It's not going well. There's a celebrity chef, Mike Wallace, who's trying to buy her out, who's like a caricature of all the worst alpha chefs that you have seen. Uh, Celebrity chef Holly Mason has a show that's in trouble. Also, people are trying to get Mike Wallace to take over on that show. And so basically, the idea is that put these two together and also put together a fake relationship between Holly and Avery, which chemistry works very well. Avery is just a very lovable character. Avery is also trans, which Lily Seabrook, the author, is also trans. She doesn't generally write trans characters that often. I can remember at least one other one, but the handling of the trans character when she does do it is very good. I like the series overall. Just the rest of them don't work as well as this one does, and the characters are not as in depth, and particularly the villains of the stories tend to get more cartoonish. Number 4 is Create a Life to Love by Erin Zach. This is one of I think this is like her fourth published novel. I have talked about her before, particularly Home for the Holidays, which I thought was very good. She has written other things. I will be quite honest. I know she has written, or I read another book that I know is going to be among the worst for June. Uh, but this one is very good. Romance novelist Jackie Mitchell uh, has Beth come to her door. Beth is the daughter that she gave up for adoption like 16 years ago. And Beth's like, hey, you're my birth mom. And Jackie's like, oh shit. uh, but Jackie drives Beth back to her home. Like this, I think Jackie's in Atlanta and their home is in, I want to say Orlando, but I know it's Florida. I don't know if it's Orlando. And meets Susan, the adoptive mom. Well, Susan is in a relationship with her husband, which is abusive, and it gets far enough that Beth and Susan leave and they end up going to stay with Jackie. Well, Jackie's a lesbian. Susan is straight. I should just have a little emoji that pops up for this. They start to develop feelings for each other. And so, yes, the birth mother and the adoptive mother. Uh, but the relationship is nice. And there's also uh, Beth develop feelings for somebody else. So Beth is attracted to both a boy and a girl, and her developing that. Well, at the same time, uh, her mother's working on the relationship, and just and it's told from 3 points of view, from Jackie, Susan, and Beth, uh, and they're all great characters on their own, and uh, it's just a great read, great character work, great romance. There's only one thing at the end that I didn't like, and it's just kind of like, ah, but for me, perhaps I'm just not as good as forgiveness as other people are, and so it's kind of just a quibble. It's like, okay. Number 3 is Guava Flavored Lies by J.J. Arias. I mentioned before there's generally age gap in Enemies to Lover with J.J. Arias, and I generally Enemies to Lovers doesn't work as well for me. This is the one case where that's not true. It's not an age gap because these Sylvie and Lauren are basically in a Hatfield and McCoy's thing because their families run bakeries essentially, uh, and like down the line, like great grandparents or whatever actually worked together, but then there was accusations of stealing a recipe, which has basically caused this family divide. And also, when Sylvie and Lauren were in school together, there was kind of like the family feud, but also I like you. Well, I like you, but we think that the other person is kind of playing, whereas I really do like you, kind of thing. So they are often in the same places at the same time. There's conflict between them, but there's also, you know, crush, desire, however you want to view it. And then there's the like inevitable, like, okay, we're into each other. We really are into each other. We're just not playing games. And we start to see who the other person is and not the enemy that we've created. And then it's also dealing with the families and everything. Uh, Lauren and Sylvie, probably one of the most balanced relationships in J.J. Rice's works. I really liked it. Their relationship is the main reason that this is so high. Also, there are misunderstandings, but they're not necessarily misunderstandings so much though that it's just a plot point to keep people apart. Just a great book. Number two is When You Smile by Melissa Braden. This one I listened to on audiobook because it has not been published yet on Kindle or in book form, but for whatever reason, it was released on Audible. So I've already listened to it. Uh, Karen Ross uh, had a babysitter when she was 11. It was uh, Charlotte, Charlie, who was 16 at the time. Big crush. Then she moved away. Years later, Taryn is 22, have been transferred to school where she's a junior. She runs into Charlie, who's a grad student now, and Taryn is an out lesbian. Charlie is straight. Charlie is also in a long term or a long time relationship with her boyfriend, who, like her, is also a writer, also a grad student, also has a famous writer mother. Uh, that relationship not as great as it might seem. Karen almost immediately goes back to like, damn, and it kind of takes a little bit longer for Charlie because one, Charlie straight, and also Charlie remembers 11-year-old Taryn, so there's getting over that, and I don't know much about that point where you are a straight person and then realize, oh, I like this person of the same gender more than I thought I would have. But for my limited knowledge of it, I think this is done very well. I like the relationship between the two. There are a few things that I wish they had explored just a little bit further because there's at least one character it's like who seems just like a plot point. It's like, okay, you have to cause conflict here, and then after that, you're not in the book anymore. And it kind of felt like there needed to be one more uh, meeting with this person, but it didn't happen. But love the relationship between the two. When it does come out on Kindle, I probably will go ahead and get it again because this is one of the ones that I will want to go back to again, at least during some scene. Uh, in number one, uh, kind of the same as last month, possibly the same as next month. It is a J.R.R. Tolkien book. It is the Two Towers. Yes, I've read it before. Uh, no, I did not give it a 5 star. I I I greatly loved it, but I didn't like the way it was split up. Perhaps it's just because I've watched the movies probably more times than I read the books, but I don't like that it's all split up into uh, the other members of the company in the first book or in book three, and then Sam and Frodo in book four. I kind of wish there was a little bit more mingling among chapters there, but because you have to read this entire half of the book before you even get to Sam and Frodo. And I'm sorry, Sam's my favorite character, and I have to read about these guys walking in the woods, talking to trees, which was fine, but it's just like I would have greatly enjoyed it more if it had been more intermingled. And especially coming off the Fellowship of the Ring, where it's basically the company, you know, it's a journey tale, and this one it's two different books, and I didn't enjoy that as much. Now it's also the case with the Return of the King, but I think the storyline with the Return of the King, I think probably works well enough that I will enjoy it more. But we will see because I have not finished it yet. I will soon. So that is the 10 books I liked least this month and 12 books I liked best. How many books did I read? I'm not going to tell you. It's a lot. So that's it for May. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll talk to you next time.